Hey there, Jess.
Hey Matt,
How are
how's
you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I am doing very well. I'm doing very well actually. I'm excited for today's episode as I always am. Anyone who listens to this knows that I'm always like excited about who we get to bring on. And I feel like I don't know, not to be too nostalgic, but we've brought on some amazing guests onto this show. I I don't know, would you agree?
We have absolutely. It's been a great run.
It has. It has. Not to indicate we're done bringing on great guests, but sometimes you just sit and you think back and you're like, wow, I've sat in this chair and talked into this microphone to some really cool people. Gives me a lot of appreciation for podcasts that have been going on for 10 plus years. That being said, we just continue our trend today of having another amazing guest with us, someone who has actually been someone we've been trying to land on the show for a little while, and luckily we finally got it sorted. We finally got it organized. I think you know this individual as well, right?
Yes, yes, we've
Awesome.
met.
That being said, and the only reason I said that is because it is not that anyone recording or anyone listening knows this. We're actually recording at a little bit of a different time for us right here, which is why our lighting might be different if you're watching the video, but it's worth it for this special guest that I'm now going to bring on stage, Philip Martin over at Coinbase. How you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great. How are y'all?
We're doing very well. It's great to have you here, and it's really awesome to have you on the show. I got to say, you're from an organization, and we'd love to hear more about it in just a moment. But I think you're from an organization that's representing some really interesting challenges, and I just can't wait to hear about what it's like for you
You
to
know,
have
sometimes we
to
say we
work there.
run the world's largest bug bounty, um, right?
Nice,
And so, yeah, we have some fascinating security challenges.
yeah, I like it. All right, well, do me a favor. Tell us a little bit about yourself and about Coinbase. How'd you end up where you're at, and what was that journey like?
Sure. So I've been at Coinbase just over 8 years now. Started when the company was about 100 people, give or take, um, and sort of built the security team up from there on a really fascinating journey. I think it's rare that as security leaders we get to be involved that early in a company. But I think what it has enabled us to do is make some really good architecture decisions starting at the very very early stages that have really created a through line of solid security
Mm.
throughout the time at Coinbase. Um, I was a Palantir before I was at Coinbase. I was at Palantir for about 5 years. Spent some time at Amazon. Spent about a decade in the U.S. military, working as a counterintelligence agent. And oddly, I was actually a software engineer before I joined the military.
Mm.
Worked at a couple of Valley startups. Worked at some microsystems for a while. And before that, I was the stereotypical hacker in my parents' basement. Although we didn't have a basement where I grew up, so it's the metaphorical basement, I guess.
That
But been
yeah.
interested in security since the very very beginning. You know, back in the 90s, there wasn't really a pipeline, right, to get into cybersecurity in the way there is today. There were no degree programs. Um, there was no like clear way to go from an interest in this space to a practitioner in the space, and
Mhm.
so um, I was able to chart a path. It wasn't a path that I intentionally charted, for better or worse, but it's a path that got me on into an amazing career, into a really really fun company, and to a set of challenges that you just don't find commonly anywhere else.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Philip, more on that. Would love to kind of hear about your team today, what that looks like, and also if you want to dig into some of the unique challenges that you face as an organization.
Sure. So team today is right around call it 280, something like that. So I'm the CSO, so I cover physical security, cybersecurity, privacy, business continuity, disaster recovery, enterprise and sort of enterprise risk management, as well as security and privacy, GRC. So one or two things,
Just a couple.
just a couple here and there. And So many interesting challenges. So the a thing I say a lot to my teams is we in general, I have a belief that people shouldn't invent new things. That's true because most things have been invented already,
Mhm.
and there's a little bit of sort of hubris in the idea that we're going to make a better wheel. Probably not. We should probably just go steal something from somewhere else, from someone else that has solved the same problem or like an 80% similar problem. And we can tweak it, we can shape it, we can sort of shave it and make it all align the way we need to. But that's a very different thing than inventing a brand new solution to a problem. The thing I get to do at Coinbase that is more interesting than anything else is I get to solve new problems. At a rate that's much higher than I ever have before anywhere else. And it's not just me; it's the team, right? Like the ability to go look at something and say, "Oh, hey, look, we're launching Base, a layer 2 roll up protocol on top of Ethereum. What are the security challenges that are going to be attached to that? Well, some of those are going to be common challenges we can go steal solutions to. Some of them are going to be totally unique." And require novel solution building. It's one of the reasons why we've invested heavily in a security engineering function, true security engineering, with staffed with software engineers who have the ability and desire and the mission to go create tools to solve problems where those tools don't exist in the broader industry. And that's a lot of fun. Other challenges, right? I sometimes talk about this as I'm protecting bars of gold that teleport. Right? Right. So it's not just about it's not just about the physical security. It's not just about the information security. It's not just about any one piece. It truly is a multidisciplinary approach to securing an asset that has novel characteristics in the world as it evolves rapidly. Right. Coinbase has been around for 12 years. And I think if I use sort of a loose analogy, I think we've gone from stagecoach to armored cars in the evolution of like how security works in space, and we're still going, right? Who knows where we end up? But there's a challenge right there of just the pace of innovation of the ecosystem as it continues to go in new directions. They're hard to predict. And both enable my team to solve, the meat and potatoes security problems, right? Everyone has a detection and response problem. Everyone gets phishing. Everyone gets supply chain attacks. Everyone gets all these things. And also take time for the novel problems that exist in our space, right? Not everyone deals with private key protection on the scale that we do. Not everyone deals with smart contract security, with immutable smart contracts, right? Not everyone everyone gets phishing. Not everyone gets the quality and level of targeting that we do in those attacks, right? And so because of that, there are frequently not commercial solutions that we get to fully rely on for some of this stuff. So tons of challenges around there as well.
Phil, oh my gosh, you've opened so many questions that I want to ask. And I also I have a weird question about your user base. Not that I want to know any information about them, but I feel like sometimes the folks that might be sending those attacks might also be users in a weird way, or they might be like destinations or sources of wallets. And that's not a thing that Coinbase is obviously responsible for, but like you're a very significant part of that ecosystem. And it's an interesting thing to be like, you can have an account at the same place, not you, but an adversary could have an account at the same place they're trying to fish. And it might be like, okay, I need this account to stay legitimate, but I need this fish to get through as well. But back to the technology thing, what type of processes does your team go through to be like, okay, does this thing exist? Or do we need to create it? Or is it one of those, because we're at the forefront, we just need to create it?
Yeah. So to maybe just answer the first observation you had, we're actually a lot like Microsoft in that way, or other sort of infrastructure providers that have that same like interesting mix and overlap. It's pretty cool. So it's it's an interesting question because everyone has different incentives when we look at solving problems. Right? Engineers want to build, and that's fine. I'm an engineer at heart. I love building things. I think customers want their problem solved in the most efficient and expeditious way possible. I think budget owners want to spend as little money as possible. I think hiring managers want to get or managers in general want to optimize their staff allocation, right? And so we I'm a firm believer in that you can largely figure out what's going to happen in a situation by really studying the incentives and how that system is set up. And so the incentives that I try to create are, humans are the most valuable resource that we have.
Hmm.
They're the hardest to get. They're the hardest to keep. And they can make the most difference, in solving a problem. And so we should apply those humans against problems that have no other solution. We should apply those humans against problems where, um, we can't spend money to solve the
Mm-hmm.
problem. And so we have a bunch of processes around, where we put dollars and where we put people. Quarterly business reviews. This is pretty standard stuff across the board that give both me and other leaders in the team visibility into where we're allocating people, what the projects we're greenlighting are, and the ability to go and ask questions like, could we really not buy this? That's surprising. Like, who have we talked to? Where have we gone?
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, it gives us the ability to say, like, actually, I think we should be building our own thing here, because this is so a great example here is key storage, right? So
Mm-hmm.
Coinbase develops all its own private key storage. Um, this is not because we couldn't. There are other solutions in the market. There are, companies out there that other exchanges outsource their key storage to. It's because when I think about, like, what is the most important thing that Coinbase does, well, we protect our customers' assets. How do we protect them? By making sure that when they give us a Bitcoin or whatever, we're able to give them that Bitcoin back when they ask, be able to do it expeditiously, be able to do it with a high degree of confidence. And I think the only way we can do that is by building these solutions, in house. It also means that we are not beholden to someone else's roadmap when we think about long-term, development, right? Someone else, a company out there doing key management is going to have a bunch of customers. They're all going to have different demands. We may not be top of the stack every single time. And so the ability to have 100% say in where we go and be able to align that fully to Coinbase's business needs, and where we see technology going, and make our own bets long term, is priceless for an organization like Coinbase that values developer velocity.
I, does the does the opposite happen as well, in which, and this may be a weird way to position this one, but when I think about, like, I'm going to say a typical enterprise, not that you're not running or functioning as one, but when a typical enterprise is like, we have users, we have data, we have systems, we have all this, like the normal architectural diagram that you think of, right? But in the space that Coinbase is in, I feel like there are also, not only are you all looking to develop and looking to build tools that others aren't dealing with. I love the comparison of, like, we house one of the most significant key value to storage pairs in the world, just because of what that key means to people. Does the opposite happen, where someone's like, hey, I've developed this thing based off of what I know about cryptocurrencies, and you're going to need this because it's, one of your products or something like that? I guess,
Sure.
and here's where I'm going with this. I'm kind of relating into, like, the DeFi movement, and how, like, it's not just a currency, if you will. It's not just a teleportable, bar of gold. I love that. But it's also a platform to be built on top of. So then
Yep.
it's kind of like, well, wait, it's both. It's both. Which part of it do we secure?
Yeah, and yes, the answer is yes. There are tons of startups out there that do innovative things, and we do business with a number of them,
Mm-hmm.
um, where they are bringing solutions to problems that, maybe we can't fully prioritize. Maybe they are putting, one of the great things about a startup versus an in-house team is they're going to put 20, 30 people on that problem that I might put 5 people on, right? Because they're focused entirely on it, and they're able to develop the mind share and the resources to really accelerating that solution. Um, so absolutely, there are times when, we, in fact, quite frequently, there are times when we buy solutions
Mm.
to problems that are unique to crypto. I think the key element for that is it's rare that we'll buy a solution that's in sort of the critical path of
Mm-hmm.
our development needs, and that's on the bleeding edge, right? Because there's just so much change and then so much execution risk there. But we will absolutely buy solutions that are, additive to work we're already doing, that are, diving deeper than we can dive given our overall resource allocation, because we have higher priority things to do. Yeah, completely.
No, that's great to know. And kind of following up on that a little bit, you've got a unique set of challenges. You've got a lot of human capital to work with, and you have the ability to build in house, but also partner with some novel technology. But I'd love to talk a little bit about the industry, the analysts out there, like the Gartner and Forrester, and kind of how you feel about them, and I guess what weight you put on that, and what you think the future of that industry looks like.
Ooh, so that's a spicy response area. I'm gonna give it to you anyway. I couldn't define for you any of the major Gartner acronyms of sectors of tools. It's I can see why it's useful in certain cases, but I also think it limits our thinking as an industry a little bit. Oh, it has to be an SSPM solution. No, it doesn't. What it has to do is solve these specific problems that I have, right? And I don't care what acronym it goes by, or if there even is an acronym for it. I have needs that I need to solve. Now, part of the reason I can take that approach is because, to your point, Jessica, I have the human capital. I have the smart engineers who can go evaluate solutions and who can get like very sharp on what's our actual problem. What do we specifically need to solve? And how do we align the solution against that problem? That's not common across the industry, right? And so I think being able to use that categorization, that shorthand as a like, I have a cloud posture management problem. And I don't necessarily even know all the details of that, but so I need a cloud posture management solution, and that lets me then cut my solution space down. I can see how that can drive efficiency and be effective for different programs. Um, Same thing for analysts in general, right? Like again, I have the human capital, I have the people. I can go put on this problem and ask like what is important here. Let's find the right solution for our needs. Not everyone has that luxury, right? One of the things I realized being in Coinbase is like I don't really live in the real world. I live in a very special Coinbase world where I have the resources and the executive buy-in, and the ability to get things done that is not what everybody has in security. And so yeah, my spicy take is like I don't use them, I don't pay attention to them, I don't personally see the value in them, but I can see how they could be useful in different circumstances.
Yeah, it's very interesting. We hear both sides of that story all the time, and we kind of fall somewhere in the middle ourselves. But loved your feedback on that. Kind of pivot a little bit and talk about AI and cybersecurity, and what you think we're going to solve with AI, because everybody's going to solve everything with AI. But would love to hear your thoughts on this.
Sure. So AI doesn't make anything better or worse. It makes things faster. Is my like overall belief. And I mean there's nuance to that, right? Because faster is a form of better sometimes. But in general, I think that then has a lot of implications for different areas. I think that we will, if AI makes things faster, takes sort of an average human and is able to make decisions at a faster pace that are at least as good in a specific specialized field, right? I think that can have impacts on efficiency. I think that can have impacts on response times. I think that can have impacts on a bunch of different areas. It can also have impacts on the other side, on the ability to acquire and process knowledge, right? If I can get AI to generate high confidence summaries, high confidence is important there, but high confidence summaries of complicated topics, or high confidence summaries of complicated long logs, I can start to really accelerate my human's ability to acquire and process knowledge. That's super cool. I also think we need to be specific about what we mean when we talk about AI. I think we throw around that term um, pretty aggressively right now. I was at RSA and it felt like AI featured everywhere. Um, and candidly, in use cases where I don't think AI probably has a role to play, at least not in the near term. Now there may be roles for machine learning to play. There may be roles for LLMs to play. There may be roles for other model types to play. But I wish as an industry we would get just like one layer deeper in being specific about what we mean about AI. Because I think the impression we can create sometimes is, like AGI, right? Artificial general intelligence is like going to solve everything. And maybe one day, not today. I also think we are firmly, if, in the sort of the classic hype cycle graph, we are firmly in the trough of disillusionment at this point with AI. It does some cool stuff. It can apply specific places. It has real value, and we should never discount that. But it is also not the panacea of solutions that I think it is being made out to be.
I was also at RSA, Philip. And I'm no shade to anybody, but every other letter was an A or an I in everything that we saw. I need a co-pilot for my co-pilots was one of the best jokes that I ever heard told the entire time. And I can't agree with you more on that. I think it's one of those like everyone's chasing it. Let's throw AI in here. And sure enough, some of the questions that you see about any piece of technology out there is like, well, what's your AI roadmap look like? And I'm like, I don't think you know what this thing does if your first question is why, where's AI in the roadmap? If the goal is to just make it easier to understand, and here's maybe my fear to add on to what you're saying is if the goal is to make something easier to understand, or it means you need less spin up time or less startup time for humans to do it, I also feel like humans are going to lose a grasp on it. Kind of like from a security detection and response perspective, I look at it as, oh, I was trained to stare at the alert screen and just decide whether it was good or bad based on what the alert said, rather than actually like, okay, what does this thing mean? How do I dig into the alert? Like, maybe very high level ticket closing versus actual analysis. And I feel like AI moves us a step further in the next direction in like just a broadly applied use case, right? I think,
That's a really interesting point. I think
yeah.
a theme I've seen in the industry for a while is the lack of generalists. Is people specializing so earlier in their career, and just
Mm-hmm.
never leaving that vertical, which in a way is positive.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the benefits that I had growing up in security, and that most of I think people of I'm going to make an assumption about your age is our generation
Mm-hmm.
had growing up in security, is that there was no such thing as the ability to specialize in the same way that exists today. We all had to touch a bunch of different areas growing up,
Yeah.
and maybe we eventually in like mid career, right, ended up specializing and then growing deep in that area. But I think that foundation is something that serves people extremely well throughout their entire career. The ability to say, well, I'm not an expert, but I have a degree of intuition.
Mm-hmm.
Here, I have at least a place to start. I have some like fundamental building blocks that I can start from or build on, and I have an idea of how the system works underneath the tool that I'm using.
Mm-hmm.
That is so important, and it's something that I think we've gotten too far away from as an industry writ large.
Yeah. No, you're revitalizing a lot of kind of those points. I remember when I was early in my career, and I was an incident responder way back in the day. It was like malware reverse engineering was probably about as specialized as someone may have got, and all that meant was you spent more time with malware than anything else. But it wasn't an exclusive thing. And now I think you can. It's not a bad thing. It's just a career path. Now you can graduate college as a reverse engineer or with an intention to be a reverse engineer. And it's like, wow, how about how the malware got there? Like, let's not forget, there's a whole nother part of this, right? It doesn't just appear out of nowhere. But yeah, I think it's a very good point. And my fear is that AI will kind of be like, oh no, we don't need to have generalists anymore. We have AI to kind of cover that base layer for us. And I'm like, that's not going to work because
No, yeah, I
the
agree.
more we throw in there, adversaries are going to find opportunities in it. I'll just summarize it that way.
Yep.
Oh, that's awesome. That's very, very cool. One thing I wanted to ask, and I'm kind of like going a little bit back to what you talked about earlier. I view a lot of your thoughts and the way that your team goes about probably building and even potentially acquiring new technology to use or procuring maybe is a better word in some cases. Um, you're probably sitting at the forefront or right next to the bleeding edge, not only from a product perspective, but also from an industry perspective, because I would say because the problems that you're solving are so unique and things like that. Potentially a weird question, but do you see like your peers or others in the industry kind of being like what are they doing? Like how are you guys relying on that? Like how important, and I'll summarize the question this way, how important is it when you're sitting right up on the bleeding edge of something that's out there? Is it to be like, let's have a consensus here versus we're going to do this thing because we see the threats that no one else sees and they're only coming to us?
Yeah. So I think having a consensus is not important at all.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the wrong way to frame it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we don't have a monopoly on good ideas, right? How arrogant would I have to be to believe that? That's that. Um, I am a firm believer in collaboration across teams, across organizations, across industries, right? Not even security has writ large has a monopoly on good ideas. I think we have tons to learn from nuclear power engineering. We have tons to learn from like traditional physical engineering in terms of how we think about the primitives that we use. I think we have tons to learn from manufacturing process engineering in
Mm-hmm.
terms of efficiency and think and like systems thinking. We tend to think of ourselves, if I can just sort of talk bad about my own industry for a second, we tend to think of ourselves as different, as special, as unique, and like yes, a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But we should also be realistic in that other people solve hard problems too.
Mm-hmm.
And it is okay for us to go look around and say, who has solved a problem that looks vaguely like this, even if it has nothing to do with security? Um, and ask ourselves, can we fit that solution into our world? Can we learn something from that solution? Can we accelerate ourselves using the learnings from somewhere else, even though doesn't come from security? I think that's absolutely critical, right? So I encourage all my folks to collaborate, to communicate, to search for solutions in analogous fields where it exists.
I like that. No, thank you. That's a good reminder for folks in security, especially our listeners too. That's a good reminder. It's really easy to think of yourself as like, well, I'm the penultimate of the organization because I keep everybody secure. And it's like, I think Philip makes a really good point here. We're solving problems. Our problems happen to be cybersecurity focused, but this is going to be a really weird analogy, but you made me think of it, Philip, is like, if you ever watch like a manufacturing assembly line, that's an incredible problem that someone solved. And there's a lot to learn from that. So no, thank you. That's fantastic advice.
Absolutely. Well, Philip, thank you again for your time. And we have one final question. So a lot of our listeners out there might be, mid-career, early career, or might be, on their leadership journey. What is the one piece of advice you'd like to give to those folks who are considering taking the next step in their career or potentially going to leadership?
I would say that. Can I give more than one? I think I have two. Um, Number one, I think that it's easy in security to spot problems. It's much harder to be the person that goes and solves the problem.
Hmm.
Um, there is value. I don't I ever want to say there's not. There is value in being that person that says, thinks hard about a situation, sees how it can go wrong, writes it down, and says like, look, here's all the ways. There's value in that, and it's real. There's a lot more value in being the person that says, and here's how we make it all better, or at least here's how we take a bite out of it, right? And like, and raising my hand, I will lead this. Here's what I can do now. Here's what I can do if you give me these resources. Here's what I can do over time. Um, to be the one that doesn't just see the problem, but that solves the problem in whatever way they can, with whatever resources and knowledge they have, um, in that moment, because that person is the one who then I, as a leader, look and say like, well, I want to give them an opportunity because I believe they're not just going to come to me with problems. They're gonna go make things better in whatever way they can with whatever tools they have. So that's the first one. The second one, related, is you probably have a career path in mind. Whoever the you is out there, You're like, I'm going to check box 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 in order to get to destination X. That's wonderful and lovely, and I hope that works out. But my view is opportunities pop up all along that path. And number one, be open to them, right? Don't have your blinders on, right? Look around for that opportunity to take a step off that path, right? If you think it will help you develop the skills and the attitude and the relationships that you will need to continue on that journey, keep an eye on that destination, and sort of loosely hold that sort of well-defined path. And I think if you do that, um, you will end up a much more valuable player long term, because you will be exposed to more things. You'll have more relationships, which really, really matter. You will have learned more and honed your ability to drop into situations and make a difference rapidly and effectively.
Solid, amazing advice. Thank you, Philip. It's very inspiring, I think, to kind of like, I don't know, really pinpoint how folks can start to make a difference. I feel like every year there's more and more people who are breaking into cybersecurity. And admittedly, some folks are like, that seems like a fun thing to do. And I think in the beginning of the episode, when you listed off kind of the laundry list of all the things that you're responsible for, just be clear, when someone says, I want a career in cybersecurity, folks, nearly anything in that category, I'm excluding physical security just at a high enough level, but there are a lot of intertwinings there. But just be aware that almost anything in that bullet list could be a career in cybersecurity. I mean, there's a lot of different facets out there, but I love the idea of like be involved, but also be the one that solves problems, not the one that just acknowledges that they're there. So awesome. This has been a great interview. Phil, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been a really fun show. As always, a huge thank you to you. And Jessica, any final words or anything? But actually, I apologize. I'm sorry, Jessica. I did not mean to put you on the spot just yet. I'll remind myself I'm human and sometimes I jump ahead. Philip, I wanted to go another route and just say, where can folks learn a little bit more about the company you work for, which we've talked at length about, but just in case anyone out there is like, what? Where can they find out?
Well, we have a website, Coinbase.com.
Mm-hmm.
Go there. We have YouTube. We put a lot of content out, and my team puts a lot of content out, including I will just plug here for you all. We put a piece of content out yesterday, which is a 5-minute video talking about pig butchering scams, and really focus on educating potential victims.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing to realize there is, you two, I'm going to guess most of your audience is already pretty savvy around financial scams, online scams, things like that. But you all know someone who's not. Mm-hmm. Both of you, I'm sure, do. Every single one of your listeners has a family member, a parent, a friend, a contact who, if they think about it, are like, if they get that text message that says like, whatever it says, "Hi Bob, remember me? We played golf together," is gonna answer, and is gonna have that conversation, and may fall victim to that scam. That person is the audience for this video. So my ask would be, you can find it on our YouTube channel. Watch it. It's a 5-minute investment. If you think of somebody in your life that needs to hear this information, send it.
Awesome. And for those of you listening or watching, we'll put a link in the show notes to that video as well. I'll go track it down before we publish this, but it's been great. Philip, thank you again so much for having us. Jess, any final words for our audience or for Philip, our wonderful guest today?
No, I think Philip brought up, in the last minute there, really interesting, point about, helping folks out there who don't have the cyber literacy that probably most of our listeners do. And I think that's really important. It could probably be a whole other episode, but no, it's been phenomenal. Appreciate your time, Philip, and insight. I think this has been a great episode. And again, thank you to our listeners. And we'll see you next time.
Sounds good. Thanks, everyone. Philip, thanks again. Thank you for being here. All right, all. Take care.